One of the most influential animated works to come from Japan, Akira is a post-apocalyptic cyberpunk action film based on the Akira manga by Katsuhiro Otomo. The movie was released on July 16, 1988 and was directed by Otomo himself. Akira, which at the time was the most expensive anime film ever made, is now regarded as one of the greatest animated movies of all time thanks to its animation, world building, story, and message. The film had a significant impact on popular culture worldwide, not only because it influenced countless artists and their works, but also because it led the way for the growth and popularity of anime outside Japan. A classic of Japanese animation. Anna, have you ever seen this movie before?
No, I'd never seen it before. It was the first time. And I have to say, it really impressed me because even though it's an anime from the 80s, and you would expect, such a popular anime from such a long time ago to have been redone and remade and, the story to have been copied many times. But I don't find it to be the case. I think the story is still unique. So I found that very interesting. It really impressed me.
Yeah, I really love this movie for a number of reasons. Of course, the little description there said it, right? The world building alone is something to note, right? There's element in the background about the city and the evolution of the city, Tokyo or Neo Tokyo, and the time period that the movie happens and before then that you can extrapolate to get so much out of, right?
And I feel like the fact that the main characters are young people gives it a certain kind of ease for the audience to explore this world.
Yeah.
You see through the eyes of kids who have lived in that city their whole lives. Like, that's all they know.
I also really appreciate the message that is there, but not overly expressed, right? It's obviously, and we'll talk about it a bit later, like a message about the bomb, right?
Right.
But they never go out of their way to just say it like that, right? They make analogies, they make a comparison.
They don't put it out there. It's not obvious.
Yeah.
You're just supposed to understand.
Yeah. And I love that level of subtleties that the story and the world brings. Speaking of the story, let's look at the plot, right? So the movie starts with the destruction of Tokyo in 1988. And we then jumped to 2019, the distant future of 2019.
Right.
Years after World War III. So that's something that, like I was talking about, they don't do a deep dive about this whole thing, the World War III, right? You just kind of extrapolate from what happened probably after the destruction of the city, then war ensues, right? But they don't talk about it. It's just part of the world building. They mention World War III, they don't go into it. They mention these different sections, right? The students are rioting in the street. They don't really go too deeply into it. You have some news casting from time to time that kind of explain a little bit, but not that much.
Like they
right?
tell you, this is going on, this is going on. And I think that is great, to build a realistic world. You have to give the audience the impression that all of these things are happening, even if they don't necessarily matter for the story.
Exactly. It's a lived-in world.
Exactly.
And you don't need the main character to be there for this world to be real. Right?
Exactly.
After World War III, the city has been rebuilt and is now called Neo Tokyo. And while the technologically advanced city might look great at first glance, you quickly realize that it's filled with corruption, crime, and civil unrest.
Does it look great though? And also technologically advanced. I found that so amusing. Every time I see movies that are done way in the past that are set into our present, which to them was the future.
Yeah.
Future. I gotta check this out, Doc.
The technologically advanced
It's in certain ways and in other ways not, right?
Right.
Like they have these super high-tech bicycle, for example, but they don't have cell phones.
Right, exactly.
But yeah, you ask, like, does it look great at first glance? There are shots that are made to establish that, right? The like high rises, the beautiful city, the rich people walking around and doing their shopping. But at the same time, almost simultaneously or right after, they show you, Canada and his group, or they show you the protest.
I feel like the image of the city, the way it's stuck in my mind, is more of those people, the lower class, the poorer people. And I find it very interesting and telling how just the city is built visually. Like you can visually see, the rich people, like they literally live higher
Higher, yeah.
compared to like the poor people who live at the street level.
Mm-hmm.
And when they have those, like they have a few shots of like panning through the city, you can see it. You see like the taller buildings being nicer, and the lower ones, like the color scheme gets darker, and
Yeah, and the layers goes even deeper than that, right? You have the rich people above. On the street level, you have, it's kind of more poor or more pedestrian. And then the underground, you have the ruins, right?
right, exactly.
So one night, Shotaro Kaneda leads his biker gang in a chase/fight against the rival clown gang. That night, Kaneda's best friend, Tetsuo Shima, crashes his motorcycle into a psychic and awakens psychic powers of his own. Following the incident, Tetsuo is taken by Colonel Shikishima, who's at the head of a secret government project that had been conducting tests on kids with abilities.
I particularly liked the moment, the introduction of the colonel, because he's pretty much the first adult authority figure that we see. And I thought it makes the viewer understand the situation of Neo Tokyo much better, at a much deeper level, because you realize, wait, this is a colonel, a person of high status, of importance, and he's now facing these kids, basically. But you don't feel in the story that they're kids. You see that they're kids, but their problems are so real.
They're so heavy, right?
Exactly, it's so heavy. And so you kind of feel like in this world, life is hard because children are kind of robbed of their
innocence and their
exactly
young days. Also, you speak of like this is one of the first authority figure we see in a movie, and he uses that authority for other means than to take care of these kids, right?
Right.
One of them just had an accident. They just round him up and put him in a helicopter to go test on him, and the others just like he barely looks at them, right? And throughout the whole movie, by the way, the colonel barely even acknowledged Kaneda, Kei, any of the other like youngsters who are at the center of the action.
Yeah.
His eyes is only on
the psychic kids.
Yeah, exactly. Speaking of Kaneda, I also find it very interesting that him and his friend, right, when you were speaking of the fact that they're young, the message that it brings to the whole story, not only him, but also Kei, right? That these people, these young people of high school age, have been robbed of their youth. They are in this shitty school where people barely care about the fact that they're there, right? There's no teachers. And meanwhile, on the other side, you have Kei, who's not in school, who's fighting the government at such a young age.
I think on a more positive note, it also implies that it's only these people that can actually fix something.
Make a difference.
Exactly. Because they are free of the preconceptions of the past, what was before the war, before the explosion. And they're just born into this world, and this is all they know, and they know they don't like it, so they will only try to make it better. And sure, that doesn't mean that everyone will succeed, and that doesn't mean that everyone will take the right path, but at least the intention of the young generation would be to like fix this corrupt and half destroyed world.
So yeah, the government has been doing an experiment on these kids, and one of those kids was the mythical Akira, an incredibly powerful being involved in Tokyo's destruction 31 years ago.
I have to say, as I was watching the movie, I didn't quite understand the story of Akira until the very end. I mean, as the movie was advancing, I was pretty much always confused. But I think that's part of the experience of watching this movie.
That's how they made it, right? At the end, you get a more in-depth explanation. But I really like also about Akira's character is that he's omnipresent. It's the title of the movie. His name is, there several times other characters call him out, and yet he's barely in the movie himself, right?
Right.
And so the term mythical here is really appropriate, not only from the point of view of inside the story, where a few people even know he exists, and the people on the outside who think he's real have all these thoughts of like, oh, Akira will come back. There's this sect, right? He'll come back and purify the city. But meanwhile, they don't even know really who Akira is.
Right. What can he do? What can't he do?
Exactly. And it's the same for the audience. For a lot of the movie, we have no idea who is Akira. Like you said, you were confused for a lot of the movie about it. So while this is happening, Kaneda teams up with Kei, an activist belonging to the resistance movement. And I want to stop a bit to talk about that resistance movement. I think it's also very interesting that, like I said, they're shown almost at the very beginning of the movie, right? They show you the pretty city with the high rise, and then they show you the people in the street and the terrorist also. And the more you learn about this resistance movement, the more interesting it gets, because in the end, turns out that one of the council person, one of the people in charge of the city, was at the head of this resistance movement.
Right.
And was feeding them information so that they would go and, get the kids or try to stop this government project or try to stop the colonel. But in the end, you kind of get this feeling that it was just higher ups playing chess against each other. And meanwhile, you have people on the ground like Kei or like Ryu, right, who they believe in something and they think they're fighting against, right, this corrupt government, but really they're part of this whole machine.
Right. Like, they're just being used, as part of someone's selfish intentions.
Yeah. So Kaneda and Kei team up, and together they find Tetsuo, but his newfound powers have made him overconfident, unstable, and dangerous. After escaping the facility, Tetsuo goes on a rampage while looking for Akira. It's now up to Kaneda, Kei, the colonel, and the other psychic to stop Tetsuo before he destroys himself and Neo Tokyo.
I found it very interesting, the part with Tetsuo getting overconfident. It's a very realistic depiction of what would a regular, beat up kid from the streets do if he suddenly got all that power. Like, you want to think that, he's actually good at heart, he would actually do something good, but no, probably all that anger will just burst out.
Yeah, because they show us several flashback of his past, right? He's been bullied.
Right.
He feels like he's always under Kaneda and being bossed around, right? There's a lot of pent-up anger and resentment.
And even though you
game.
get the feeling like, he's a good friend.
Yeah.
But as soon as he gets that power, he can't think about
gets
that
to his
anymore.
head, right.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm. And also there's the fact that it kind of makes him crazy, right? He hallucinates for a while, and then it doesn't help his mental state. Next up, the bomb. The bomb analogy. Of course, one of the first image of the movie is of Tokyo, the old Tokyo, getting destroyed, and one of the last is of Neo Tokyo getting destroyed also. The visual is striking. You see it right away, you think of the atomic bomb. The moment in the movie that maybe explains the most what the movie is trying to represent is when Kei, while she's locked up with Kaneda, explains this idea of what happens when you give an amoeba the powers of the energy of a human.
Right. I have to tell you, it took me a while to wrap my hand around what she was saying, but once I got it, I thought, this is genius.
So yeah, it hasn't evolved to the point where humans are, even if it's, at the basis of human evolution. And so it wouldn't do what humans do with that kind of power. It would do
whatever it does.
Exactly, which is consume.
Yeah.
And so what happens in this case in the movie when you give humans the powers of basically gods, right?
Yeah.
They wouldn't do what gods do. They would just do what humans do, which is what Tetsuo does. He acts on his selfish and human desires, right?
Yeah.
And she also described it as pure energy, right? So you can see right away the analogy with the bomb, right? The atomic bomb, which is a power so horrendous that really you think humans shouldn't be in possession of something like this, because they would only do with it what humans do.
Which is to destroy.
Yeah.
When really the power itself, the technology itself, could be used
for other purposes.
Exactly. Right.
This is one of the reasons I love this movie, is these different messages that are there in the movie, but again, like we said at the beginning, not overly explained to the audience.
And it doesn't poke you in the eye with it, It doesn't explicitly tell you, hey, this is what I'm trying to say. It lets you understand and you understand. And we've been talking about the message and the analogies and all of that. One thing that really impressed me is how current all of these issues still are. Like, pretty much all of the topics, the main topics that we have talked about, are still an issue today.
No, definitely. This is a movie that has endured through time, right? That's why it's still so popular today. And we could have went through other themes that are present in the movie, right? Evolutions and all that civil unrest part. Like, there's a lot to digest here. And I think it's also very interesting that both the original story, the manga, and the movie were helmed by the same person, right? Which is usually not the case.
Right, but I think maybe that's what made the movie so good.
Yeah,
Like,
exactly.
he knew what he wanted to tell.
Because even then, this doesn't tell the whole story, right? It's not the entire manga, but it feels like it's contained enough. It makes sense by itself. And he did a good job of adapting his own material in that sense.
Right.
So Anna, that was anime number 11 on our bucket list of anime we wanted to watch. Did you enjoy watching this? Are you regretting that we put that on the list?
Oh, I definitely don't regret it, and I definitely enjoyed it. After you told me how influential this anime was, and what a milestone in Japanese animation in general, I definitely see it. Like, you can definitely tell that this anime, pretty much changed the course of anime.
And of a lot of Western works that have been influenced by it since also. I also really enjoyed it. I don't regret at all putting it on the list. I think it was a great choice. And now Anna, it is time for us to rank it because, of course, we rank all the animes we watch. But caveat, we will rank series and movies separately because I think it just makes more sense that way.
Yeah, they're very different mediums, so it makes sense.
Yeah, agreed. So, meaning this is the first movie we've watched on this list, so it is going to be number 1 for now.
It's
on the
gonna be
ranking.
hard to top it.
Yeah, I think so too. But we have other movies coming up and other series. So yeah, if you've also seen Akira, let us know in the comment section below what you thought of it. Like this video if you did, and subscribe. Thank you everyone for watching, and don't forget that if you yourself have a goal or a dream that you want to realize, take that first step.